Monday, we're going casual today, like we do every Monday. If you have a question, comment, concern, throw that in the live chat. If you want to join this show and be on camera, join our Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Scum Podcast. I'm waiting for Dale to join us. He's got all the goods. We're going to be talking the goods right before. We got to learn how to pivot. Joining me today is executive producer Heidi Feder. Hi, Heidi.
Hello.
But we got to learn how to. Thanks for joining me, by the way. We have to learn how to pivot. We were supposed to talk about one thing, and moments before we went live, Deadline threw us a curveball, so we changed the topic of the show. Heidi, why don't you clue us in on what this topic is and why this is the happiest day of your life?
Well, according to you, so I have to go on your word, they have officially canceled Acolyte. There will be no season 2. And I'm not happy about that because I did like the show, and my favorite villain was on that show. So
your favorite villain was on the show. And you know what? I will give props where props are due on the villain. I also enjoyed that villain. But yeah, you said it exactly. This you blamed me for the news, which is fair. But the truth is, this comes from Deadline. Deadline is reporting as of only like an hour ago, 4:10 p.m. So 4 hours ago. Where was I? Working, people. I was working. That's where I was. Exclusive, the story of The Acolyte will not continue, with Lucasfilm opting not to proceed with a second season of Star Wars offshoot starring Amanda Stenberg. Sources tell Deadline. This is from Nelly Andriva. Word of the decision comes more than a month after the 8-episode first season of the series from creator, director, executive producer, and showrunner Leslie Headland wrapped its run on Disney+. The news is not entirely surprising. The Acolyte did okay with critics, with 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, but divided Star Wars fans, which was reflected in its overall viewership. Driven by interest into the venerable franchise, The Acolyte got off to a strong start when it launched June 4th, with 2 episodes generating 4.8 million views in the first day of streaming, to rank as the biggest series premiere on Disney Plus this year. The tally rose to 11.1 million views globally after 5 days of streaming, corroborating Disney's data. The series made its debut on Nielsen's Top 10 Originals chart in its premiere week at number 7, 488 million minutes viewed, climbing to number 6 the following week. But The Acolyte could not sustain the momentum, dropping out of the top 10 in week 3 and staying off before returning at number 10 after the release of the finale, 335 million minutes, believed to be the lowest for a Star Wars finale. So it goes on and on and on about how it was basically a disappointment in terms of numbers. Now, numbers and what you see with your eyeballs are two very different things. John Locke is here saying, good riddance to bad rubbish.
oh boy.
And Sunathron's here saying, no Acolyte, geez, season 2 is going to be better. I will say, Heidi, before I get to you on your first raw thoughts on it, I agree with Sunathron in that season 1 for me was a letdown. I've said that numerous times, but where it ended, I was like, this is where I want to go. And so while I completely understand the cancellation, like when you read this and you see the numbers, it makes complete sense, especially when you give the price tag, given the price tag that was thrown onto it. It makes complete sense. But I'm with Sunathron. Heidi, your initial raw thoughts when I sent you that article.
I mean, it seems like Disney put something out and then you get into it and some people love it, some people hate it, and then we're not going to go anywhere with it. Same with Solo. I mean, I believe there are legit complaints about the series, but all in all, there were some really good episodes. I think episode 5 was amazing, and like I said, we had that a couple weeks ago we did top 5 lightsaber battles. I think I had that as number 1.
Yeah, I think you did.
So I mean, episode 5 was amazing. It's just what Disney's doing is they put out these shows and then the ratings aren't good, so then they just drop it. It's like, well, I want to know what happened to this character. I want to know what happened with Kira and Darth Maul. I want to, what happened to Solo. I know a lot of people Solo didn't do well, and I think one of the reasons Solo didn't do well is because there was so much backlash against The Last Jedi, and there are just fans who just absolutely hate it. And I think there's also fans who are against Disney in general because they think Disney's gone too woke. I was not happy with Gina getting fired from The Mandalorian, but that's another story. But
that's one that we should talk about one day because I still don't really know what happened. And the thing is, I find it very because I only see what I see on Twitter, Heidi, and everybody on Twitter seems to hate her guts and is glad she's gone. But you're the opposite of that. So that's a conversation for another day, obviously. But that's an interesting take on it.
I heard that it was Kathleen Kennedy who wanted her fired and nobody else. If that's true, that I've actually been a big defender of Kathleen Kennedy, but when I heard that, I was kind of like,
yeah.
I don't know politics, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, we'll get into that maybe on another day when we can. But let's we have some stuff in the chat to discuss here. We have the Skywalker Academy and Sunathron, but we'll Sunathron first. So now we won't see Plagueis, and I'm going to this one before Skywalker Academy because you brought up Solo with Kira and Darth Maul, and this seems to be like this common thread. It's part of the problem is they don't have a cohesive story being thought out from, and you can't really it's really tough to do. I know the MCU can, but the MCU is contained in a timeline. I know Fantastic Four is the 60s, whatever, but we're going all over the place, right? With Acolyte being 100 years before the prequels and Solo taking place in the middle, but then the prequels are after. We're going all over. We don't know what's up and what's down half the time. So it is different. It's harder to do it, but you bring in characters like Plagueis, like Darth Maul, and I think the difference for me though is Darth Maul. I think Ron Howard said it basically is they threw Darth Maul in because he was cool, and it would be cool to see Darth Maul, and they got the reaction. But I think the Acolyte, I think they threw Plagueis in because I think even though I thought a lot of the writing on the show was subpar, I think Leslie Headland likes Star Wars, appreciates Star Wars, and respects Star Wars, and I think that's why we got Plagueis. I think there was more to Plagueis than we got in that. So I think they are different. But again, it's disappointing that if they have a plan for Plagueis from the Acolyte, continue that story. Get different writers in there, get different showrunner if you want, but continue that story. If there is a plan for Plagueis, continue that story.
Well, again, like Chimere, I think is maybe become one of my favorite Star Wars villains because he's multifaceted. He's not. Darth Vader first came on the scene and it was new. It was different. Here was a scary guy who had to breathe through a mask. But ever since then, every villain has copied Darth Vader and just being angry and brooding all the time. Well, here now we have a villain who has a personality. He can laugh. He can be upset. He might even be able to. I don't know if he's in love with this character or not, or if he's just a sociopath who's leading her on. I don't know. But I feel like we finally got a multifaceted villain in Star Wars, and now we're just going to throw him away. And I think that's a huge waste of a character.
You know what? To build on your point there, I thought he was almost wasted in this show. I think this show would have benefited a lot greater had it focused more on him than what it ended up ultimately focusing on. Because for me, I know everybody loves Saul, and I was on board with Saul, I think, for an episode and a half in the entire series. And it was halfway through. I was like, oh, I finally like Saul. I think it was episode 5. I was like, I finally like Saul. But what I didn't like was he ended up being the dumbest character on television. It not take away him being a Jedi, just the things that he wasn't cluing into, blew my mind. And in that, for me, that was a little disappointing. And we spent so much time with him, and you wanted to like him. And, it's almost like he kind of represented the show to me, where I was like, I really want to like this show. Everybody on this show seems to love Star Wars, except for that one writer or whatever in the writers' room who'd never seen it. But everybody seemed to really like Star Wars, was really proud of this thing. And every week I watched it, save maybe episode 5. I think it was 4 I like better than 4, 5.
I think 5 was the best.
5 was the most exciting, but the problem was it was like that's episode 5. And I think, and then like episode 1 and 2, I was like, oh, okay, I was like, it wasn't great. 3 was, in my opinion, it was just a disaster. I was like, what the heck are we doing here? Like that, like it just like everything. I appreciated what they were doing in it with like how these witches view the Force as a threat. I thought, okay, it's a different viewpoint, fine, whatever, like fine. I was kind of like, I found it, but the execution of it was really mind-boggling. Like it just felt so cheap and cheesy to me that I was just struggling with it. And then you struggle going forward, and they kept referring back to that. And I was like, but I'm not into that. And that's when I realized that the show, like this show, and I said this I think last week, I'm like, the show had so many positives, but it was surrounded by negatives. It was like a champagne glass in like a pit of lava. Like that is like it's the best, but I can't get to it because of this lava that's surrounding me.
Well, if you look at the titles, most episodes had 2 titles. I forget what they were, but there were a couple, like I think episodes 3 and 7, they only had singular word titles, but they matched. So 3 was supposed to go with 7. Same thing with 4 and 5.
Right.
4 was day, 5 was night. So they purposely put it out of order. And if you're going to put something out of order, you got to be careful because you're going to lose the audience. I remember there was a show called Mythbusters, and you would watch it and you would be into like an experiment they were doing. And then they would go on to another experiment. And it's like, wait a minute, what happened to the other experiment? So then you would get into that experiment and then they would go back to the original one. So it's like you would be into a story and then they would quickly turn around and put you in another story. And it was always like, so like, okay, I'm going to tell you what happened. Oh, no, we're being attacked. I can't tell you right now. It's like, I hate that. I hate when they do that.
Absolutely. I didn't like that either.
And at the end, I honestly thought Saul came off as a pedophile.
Yes, and you're not the only one.
You're
not the only one.
Girl, and his dying words were, "I always loved you."
Yeah, I think they were going for something else, and I don't. Again, it's just the execution of things on this show just felt way off. Yeah. And I know, I think they're like, every time I think about it, I get frustrated. And Brock watched it a second time. I think, did you watch it again? Did you do another sit through of it? No, I don't know if I will. I don't know if I will. I've only, to be honest with you, I've only sat through the full season of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. I think are the only 2 that I've rewatched entirely. And that's not because I haven't liked any other stuff. It's just because, they're episodes and whatever. But this, I don't know if I have a desire to sit through this one again. And I really liked, but the thing is, I really, really, really dug where it ended. But I didn't like the journey to get to that ending so much. And there are, like I said, there are things in there that I like, but I just feel like when you look at the ratings, and again, the budget of this thing was $180 million. And I don't want to sound rude, but it did not look like it cost 100 and like Andor. When you read Andor cost 200 and whatever it was. Yeah. I mean, it looks good. Like Andor actually looks good. It looks like a movie. It's very film. It's theatrical. The eye episode is spectacular. There's like, it looks like there was money in that show. And this one looked, I was like, this is like 2000 Smallville. 2001 Smallville is what I'm watching. And I just I don't know. There's something up with it that I feel bad for everybody involved, because obviously everybody was trying to make something really, really good and wonderful. But it just somewhere along the way, something got lost, and there might have been embezzling involved. I don't know.
It's almost like people are trying too hard. I like Tony Gilroy. He didn't know anything about Star Wars, and he ended up making one of the most amazing Star Wars I had ever seen. In fact, he even said, "Oh, you know who might be good for Star Wars? Natalie Portman," not knowing that Natalie Portman was in.
Yeah.
And that made a lot of people mad. But
then he followed up with a good show. Right. Not everybody loves Andor. It is the slower of all of them, but it definitely is more adult, but I don't think you could tell me it's a bad show. I think if you wanted to argue that Acolyte is a bad show, I think you have a better argument for that versus Andor.
But see, like I like Acolyte better than I like Ahsoka. So I don't know.
And yeah, I don't know. You know what? So we got Vermont Mike is saying that the lightsabers for Acolyte look like they bought Star Wars branded toy sabers. I brought this up with Brock last week on the podcast, or it might have been here, but I don't like the sound of lightsabers. That is very well documented. But I thought the lightsabers are starting to look like glow sticks. Like they're not looking like light beams anymore. They're looking like tubes that light up, like the toy ones that we see online. And so I just there's just little things. Again, this isn't enough to make me not like a show. I should point that out right away. But I did think the lightsabers look better in Ahsoka than in this. But your point about Ahsoka not being as strong as Acolyte, I wouldn't. I think I might have liked Ahsoka better, but I don't think I would argue with you either. Like I feel like Ahsoka at the end of I think Balin and Chimere maybe could be neck and neck. I think Balin's a little bit stronger, maybe, but at the end of the day, at least Chimere kind of went somewhere. Like the Ahsoka just stopped. It just like stops ceasing to exist. It's like and done. But we didn't get anywhere, didn't we? And we didn't.
Well, like I said, like even Chimere has a sense of humor. No other villains in Star Wars have senses of humor. At least not when they go to the dark side. I mean, I guess you could say Vader told that one dad joke in Rogue One when he said, "Don't choke on your aspirations" to Krennic, and he start choking him. But other than that, I haven't seen any villains with sense of humor in Star Wars. I mean, there are funny scenes with Kylo Ren having a temper tantrum or Hux walking on him when he's shirtless, but I never he's like let me put it this way, except for Palpatine laughing maniacally, Chimere is the only villain I've seen smile. None of them.
Yeah. He I think that's like he is a character that I would like to go on more adventures with and see what's up and learn more about him. But I don't want that in a comic. I don't want that in a book. I just don't like it. And look, I've written a book. Buy my book, Cape Side Bay. Buy it today. Buy all of Heidi's books. There's nothing again. I gotta get Aaron to get yours. Yours, I have them all in my my soon to be office. But like it's nothing against any of that. It's just I don't know. It just feels like it's cheapening that if you go that route. And I'm not here for that. I'm here for give me, you know what? Give me a Chimere. They won't do it, but Chimere Disney Plus show, make it cost $50 million or whatever. Throw it on there. A little story about how this non-Sith dude is just walking around and he's learning or whatever. Make it afterwards. I don't care when you do it. Him and Plagueis do something. There is a very good story there. Manny Jacinto, I believe that's his name, crushed the role. I think even the biggest hater, I think, would be hard-fetched to argue that he didn't do a solid job in this show. And I don't know. That's the one that you go. It's like Darth Maul in the end of Solo. Like we want more Darth Maul. And Kira was good in that too. For like all the faults of that movie, Kira and Darth Maul were like, "All right, let's do it." And the movie didn't do well, and the show didn't do well, and now those things are just dead in the tracks. I mean, maybe books and comics, but dead in the tracks.
I mean, something I noticed about Star Wars series is Episode 5 seems to always be their strongest. I mean, with the exception of season 2 of The Mandalorian, where
what was episode 5 of that? I don't remember.
That was the one where Boba Fett comes to rescue him.
Not a bad episode.
Yeah, and then you had Ahsoka. She goes into the world between worlds. She runs into, and that was the best episode of the series. I'm not saying I hated Ahsoka. I like.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm saying it's my least favorite of the series. I mean, what else? And like I said, episode 5 of the Acolyte. I mean, like I said, it was the most amazing lightsaber fight I've ever seen. So I don't know what it is about episode 5.
Well, even X-Men 97, one of the best episode was 5. I think it's like the halfway mark. So that's kind of like the false sweeps. Maybe we got Skywalker Academy earlier on. Said we also don't get Boba Fett in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie because of fans' reaction to the book of Boba Fett. Scuttlebutt mentioned that on Twitter, and I kind of commented on it. And I said, I like Book of Boba Fett, and I don't argue with people about it one way or another because it's not worth my time. I like it. You don't like it, that's fine. But also, look, it's just like not to the same extent as the Acolyte, but people did not like the Book of Boba Fett. They don't like the way Boba Fett was portrayed. Now, I felt like we got this side story of Boba Fett, how he was like a bounty hunter, and he got a new lease on life, and he liberated this village. And now he's out to do whatever. And so he could return to being a badass in space if he wanted him to, because we got this story. And now he's wiser, stronger, blah, blah, blah. But also what I said, and that was, I'm like, did we even need Boba Fett post Return of the Jedi? I don't think I was always content with him being dead. I was fine with it. I'm shocked that I loved the Book of Boba Fett as much as I did. But I did. Because he was never a character that I cared much about, because he just died when I was like, he just died. It wasn't, I had the toy. It wasn't my favorite toy, like a lot of kids. So I just, for me, Heidi, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like I would love to see Boba Fett back, but if he doesn't come back, I'm not too bent out of shape about it.
I mean, the actor loves the role. That reason alone, I want him back, because I know he's going to give it his all.
Yeah.
I loved Book of Boba Fett. Even
that's why you have to show with me. You haven't been banned.
Even if episode 5 and 6 with
Mando.
Where we see Luke, we see Grogu. I mean, honestly, that I know it took away from the Book of Boba Fett, but for like a second when I was watching episode where Luke is trading Grogu, like I forgot that I was not watching a movie.
No, I'm with you. Like I think the biggest mistake with Book of Boba Fett was they should have called it like the Mandalorian : Book of Boba Fett or something. Like they should have connected it more than it being its own thing.
It's just Disney just like turns out these series and they don't do well, and then all of a sudden, okay, well we left the cliffhanger, but now we're not going to do anything with it, and that I don't like. And I was afraid this was going to happen. I could argue that oh God, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, did I distract you? From Mike, I have to admit, Heidi has a point. Chimera is much calmer vibe, which is a nice change. So I had to give you the shout out that again. So Book of Boba Fett.
Like I feel like I want another season of Obi-Wan. I want to see him team up with Rex. I mean, there's things in Obi-Wan I would have done different. I would have liked for Bail Organa to show up and help, because he said he was heading to Tatooine just in case. So I wanted Bail Organa to show up to help but he didn't. It's like, okay, that went nowhere.
I think Obi-Wan Acolyte said, "Don't think this is true of Book of Boba Fett." I think the issues people have with Book of Boba Fett are different, but I think for me, the issue with those two and Ahsoka, especially Ahsoka, so definitely those three: Kenobi, Ahsoka, and the Acolyte, and maybe Mandalorians. No, I still think that's not. But those three, for me, what the problem is they tried to do too many things. Right. Instead of just, hey, this is a story about Obi-Wan Kenobi saving, with Leia or whatever. Like, this is a story of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but also there's Reva, and also there's this, but also that, and you're like, just get 6 episodes. Like, just do it 6 episodes. You got to be tight. And they keep going in these directions. And I didn't think Reva was a very good character. I was just like, the other Inquisitors were way cool. Like, they're cooler looking. And anyway, I was kind of bored with that stuff. And it's like, you have what you have what you need, and you're throwing this all out there, and there's only 6 episodes, and when it's done, I don't feel satisfied with it because you went all over the place. Like Obi-Wan and Vader is all that show needs, right? You throw obviously the Leia. If you need like a storyline, like a plot, so whatever. But Vader and Obi-Wan, that's your story. That's where you're going. That's where we want to. That's where everyone feels, and they nailed those scenes. They nailed them. I like the Underworld Rails, but there's so much going on. And then Ahsoka, I don't have to explain. There's just everything is going on in Ahsoka. this villain's doing that villain's doing that villain wants to do that, Ahsoka wants to do this, the droid's doing that, Sabine's doing that, and you're like, there is a lot happening. And I mentioned this last week, Heidi, where I've watched a couple animated TV shows recently, and they are 20, and these are new ones that just came out, and they're 22 minutes long. And one of them was Ninja Turtles because I'm an adult, but there's 4 main characters, and there's a villain, and then side characters. And somehow in each 22-minute episode, they had a main storyline, and they had time for, I mean, they split them up so there's only about one, but they fleshed it out so there wasn't too much going on in every episode. And I was like, oh, that's the difference, is there's a ton going on. Like the Acolyte, there's the twins, there's Saul, there's Yord Horde, there's so much happening. And you're like, just strip it down, just tell me the story you told me you're going to tell me. Don't worry about the other nonsense. Like I don't like, and so I just feel like they're just so all over. They're all ADHD. Like they're just all over the place. Hone it in, strip it out, and just tell like a small story. And I think honestly, all 3 seasons of the Mandalorian, even though Mandalorian 3, I think you and I have talked, it has its issues and whatever. It's better as a one thing. And Book of Boba Fett, I think those are a lot tighter in terms of what they're doing, because there's not a lot. I mean, obviously Book of Boba Fett leaves for Mandalorian for a bit, but it's still in that world. Like they're still connected.
Well, I know what I love Book of Boba Fett, and to me, just the episode where we see Luke training Grogu is just one of my favorite Star Wars episodes of any TV show. Yeah. It's fine. But here was my problem with the Book of Boba Fett. We were confused of who the villain was.
Yeah, that's true.
It was like, oh no, it's the Pikes. No, it's so Pikes say, no, it's not us. First it was the mayor. The mayor says, it's not me, it's the Pikes. Then he goes the Pikes. Pikes are like, no, it's not us, it's the Hutts. The Hutts show up, it's not us. Oh, wait a minute, it's the Pikes. It's like, I don't know if they just like crammed it into like.
I think they were trying to throw you off the scent because they're trying to do the gangster movie.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just there were just too many. What do you call it?
Red herrings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like that just fell flat for me. If they were trying to do they shouldn't have done a mystery. They should have known right away who the villains were. To me, that would have been better. I mean, when I write, I do plot twists, but that's because I develop the story as I go.
I think
we're just shoving too much information into.
Yeah, I have to. I did rewatch that, but I haven't seen it since when it came out 3 years ago, I think. So I haven't seen it in however long it's been out. So I might go back and check that point out because I don't remember that, but I believe what you're saying. But I thought it would have been cool if Kira showed up at the end of that.
Yeah.
That's what I think. There was a rumor going around online about that, and I'm like, that would have been. I think that would have. I don't think it would have saved the show, although you have Kira and Solo and Book of Boba Fett, 2 things that the fans aren't crazy about. Yeah. But I think that would have been. I think that would have been a nice ending, and then you can have a plan of where Kira's going as well, because I think that if Disney did that, Lucasfilm, I should say, if Lucasfilm did that, I think that would be a lot of goodwill to the fans. I think the fans. Oh, was that me or you?
I
think
me.
The fans.
Sorry,
my ears just blew. I think the fans just want to see that you have a plan and a structure in play, and I think what happened with The Last Jedi is there's a lot of fans didn't feel like that. I mean, and obviously it turned out to be true that there was no plan, and I think we just want to, and I say the royal we, whatever, but I just like what are you doing? And what is it? And I think one of the things with Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett, and I think one of the reasons why I like Book of Boba Fett was I could tell where it was going. Like it like whatever your argument and complaint can be about Book of Boba Fett, it is one self-contained story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if they didn't do a second season and don't do a second season, there's no problem because we had the whole story was told. Like that little story they were telling about Boba Fett and the Sand People, and then the liberating the people of Tatooine. Like that was done. It's all done. Like we've moved on from that, and I think that's why. I think that's one of the reasons why I really like it too. Is I was like, okay, I'm watching this mini series take place. I don't need to watch the next season. I don't need to watch the season before. I know what's going on.
Well, I mean, like I actually liked his journey. I liked how rebirth, how he was reborn. I liked how he lived among the sand people and how he loved this group. That train scene, that train robbery scene is amazing. Even if you don't like
I love it.
him going to the bar and saving Cammy and her husband or whatever. I like all of that. Like I said, the only complaint was they just kept saying, no, this guy's a bad guy. No, this guy's a bad guy. And because we went to
too many bad guys.
2.5, we had to rush through that. And I know a lot of people didn't like the Vespa gang. I think that was a little bit of a tribute to George Lucas because he was but you kind of needed a reason to talk about repairing people with robot parts because the sheriff had to be fixed at the end. They also kind of hinted that he was leaving, that Boba Fett was leaving Tatooine and leaving the sheriff in charge of Tatooine.
Yeah.
Well, in that sense, there's something. So we don't know what happened. It's just, I don't know. It's just annoying that these characters just get left behind and we don't know what happens.
Well, Cobb is a little annoying, but I still have this feeling that we're going to get to the meat of whatever happened there is what we're going to do. So then we got to bring up Skywalker's Academy. The nice thing about fantasy writers, the writers can put anyone they want into a show and give them a reason to be in it. And Skywalker Academy would trade Boba Fett for Zeb. Zeb has every reason to be in it with Callus, right? And then I just said that Zeb was in the space bar in Mando 3, and he's saying, but Mando was in Book of Boba Fett, their friends now. That's true, but my point to the bar is they're setting up Zeb in this because the Boba Fett stuff happened earlier. We don't know where Boba Fett is now. And you know what? He's saying what he's saying, Tamara Morrison, but he could be in the Mando and Grogu movie for all we know. We have no idea what's going on with that movie. I didn't even realize they shot enough to even show something at D23, and they did, and it looked phenomenal.
I downloaded it, but even though I downloaded it, it wouldn't let me play it anymore. So sorry.
It's done. It looked really cool.
It got blocked if you downloaded it, but
I'll say this: it looked cool, but also I'm glad to wait for an official trailer for it or see it in the theater because it is. I have Vermont Mike said loved Ahsoka. For some reason, Andor was a little slow for me. Animated material is the most consistent performance for Lucasfilm. True story. Last week or the week before, Brock and I, that was our topic for the show, was how animated stuff seems to be the most consistent. People seem to consistently like the animated stuff. People seem a little bit more willing to accept the animated stuff than the live action stuff. And you know what? You're not the only one who said Andor was a little slow. I think a lot of people did. I think that's just the tone of that story, and that's something that I like. I like the slow burn, and I prefer talking to action. I get bored with a lot of action, especially these. I'm getting very old. I'm like, oh man, yelling at the cloud. When I'm not going to lie to you, I have fast forwarded action scenes when I've watched, but I have fast forward action scenes when I've watched a movie on TV because I'm like, nah, I'm good. I know what's going to happen, and I do feel like a lot of fight scenes, you're like, okay, well, I know this is how this is going to end. Why I don't need to waste my time doing it. Like I'm the one person in this Captain America Civil War. I'm actually the guy who got bored in the airport sequence where they're all like 400. They're all the CG fight fest. I'm just like, I'm not really into this. But Andor is, and I think I think Mandalorian is a better Star Wars show, but I think Andor is a very strong show. I think it's a beautiful looking show. And I think it's probably the most liked Star Wars show, maybe other than Mandalorian. But I also understand where people are coming from when they find it boring or they don't find it Star Wars enough because that droid in it doesn't look. The droid's awesome. The D2 Emo or something like that droid is awesome, but it doesn't look like a super Star Wars looking droid. It looks like something out of a British TV show for sure. And then they swear in it. There's things in it that aren't very Star Warsian,
right.
But it's still very Star Warsian at times. And and I love seeing the galaxy hiding from this different vantage point that we don't get to see. And I thought it was a thrill to watch that.
Yeah, I understand why the first 3 episodes of Andor were dropped at once, because I think if it had been dropped once a week, it would have people would have turned out real quick. You definitely had to see that, and it was just because each like every 3rd episode was a completely different story. But like I said, I just thought that was amazing. I personally, I don't know. It's kind of like I got into the Bad Batch. I thought season 3 was phenomenal. Season 1 was okay, but I really didn't get into it until halfway through season 2. So I'm probably not an expert on the animated. I really haven't been into it. I haven't watched any Rebels.
Rebels, you know what I will say, Rebels, give Rebels a shot.
Yeah.
I know if you're not into animation, it'll be hard, but if you can give it a shot, season 1 might be a little bit. Maybe watch the last episode of season 1 and just guess who all the characters are. Because season 2, it picks up and it turns into some really, really solid, fun Star Wars that I think if Rebels was a live action show, everybody would hate it, but it would be the best live action show we got.
Yeah. See, I wouldn't mind if they redid a live action version of Obi-Wan fighting Darth Maul, but I know some people didn't want to do that because it was already in the animated version.
Yeah, which is one thing that sucked when we saw Solo was we just saw Darth Maul die like a year before, and we're like, what? Or was it 2 months before? It was either a year or 2 months. Like it wasn't much. It wasn't. We weren't far removed, and you almost wish one of them hadn't happened. And frankly, I kind of wish it was the Rebels one that happened. Well, now because of Solo's reception, I'm kind of okay with it. You know, when Solo came out, Josh Lucas at the Den of Nerds, he had a theory that Boba Fett was going to show up in the Solo movie, and his scene was going to be reminiscent of Vader's hallway scene in Rogue One. And every time, and I like Solo quite a bit. I think it's a very solid movie, but I also think had they done that somehow, if there would have been just a big epic moment at the end with Boba Fett, right, preferably Boba Fett because he's so tied to Han, I think the movie would have been received a lot better, especially after The Last Jedi split. I think fans would have loved that ending. Like if you throw Rogue One after Last Jedi, I don't think it does well, but I think that Vader scene has people coming back and back and back. I think if you do it, it might not be as iconic as Vader, but I think if you would have done that, appeased a bunch of the fans after The Last Jedi, I think Solo, maybe Darth Maul, Kira. I don't think we would have got a Solo 2 still necessarily, but I think we might see some of these characters on Disney Plus. We might get more of them, and there might be love more for the movie as a whole.
Yeah, I just don't want stuff thrown away. I want to know what happened. It's kind of like I did like the sequels, but I want to know what happened in between. And I'm someone like me, like I have trouble reading, so for me to sit down and read a comic book or a book to see what happened to Luke or Han or Leia, I'm just not going to get into it. I have to visually see it.
To me, that's lazy anyway, not you.
Yeah.
Putting that now, the one thing that I always say is they are in a tough spot with those three because they've obviously aged. Like they we could DH, but everybody complains about that. So it's a little bit of a tough spot, and obviously Carrie Fisher isn't with us anymore. Right. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. Now they didn't do it when they had the chance to, and that's not something that I feel like discussing now. It didn't bother me when I did either. So Rogue One and Andor was created by sane guys. Ron Prasak is saying, I just don't understand how there is not a person whose only job is to say, I don't think this is a good idea. I think it's beyond that, though, Heidi. I think Acolyte, to me, when they that announcement, remember that big announcement, Kathleen Kennedy came up on stage and announced 4 million projects. Acolyte was one of the two that happened. The Acolyte sounded like the coolest idea. When we got the first poster for the Acolyte, it looked like the coolest idea. When we got the first real synopsis, it sounded like a super cool idea. Then I got the trailer, and I thought the trailer looked meh. Then we got another trailer, I thought it looked meh. Then we got a scene, and I didn't like the scene very much. And we started getting things, and I think it's not somebody saying no to the idea. It's someone looking at the dailies, looking at the storyboard, someone looking at the scripts and saying, we need a rewrite on this because time exists.
And if he gets, I don't know if they're just surrounded by yes men or what. I mean, I think Lucas was surrounded by yes men during the
Yep.
prequels. It's like I said, I think one of the reasons why the original trilogy is so good is because he gave them their story, but he wasn't surrounded by yes men. They actually reined him in. And actually, I know I've told this story 1,000 times, but A New Hope was a mess. And his ex wife was the one who edited it and got to where it was going to be. And he thought it was going to be a bomb. So he and Steven Spielberg went to Hawaii. He was shocked.
Yep. And it was a massive hit. And
Yeah. So
yeah, I think I don't know what it is. I know that the Acolyte came out around a time, I believe, when they were, or maybe I don't know if it was, but it was being developed anyway during a time where it was greenlighting everything. It was just I think what happened though was it was in that where Bob Iger left and Bob Chapek was in. It was the MO was get as much as you can on the screen. So my guess is those scripts were heavily rushed to get done, and I just feel like a lot of it wasn't fleshed out properly because there's a lot of good stuff in there that's just surrounded by why would that happen? Why would this happen? How could that, like, why are you doing that? And again, for me, it looks like they're on, every time I look at it, it looks like they're on a set. It just looks like they are on like a fake set. And I would prefer, this is going to be controversial, but I would prefer the volume to those fake styrofoam rocks that you see them standing beside in a cave.
Well, like, and I'm keep going back to the prequels. I didn't like. I'm not saying I hated the prequels. They're not my favorite because all it is CGI. Like everybody's like, oh, that opening scene in Revenge of the Sith is so exciting. It's like, no, it's not. It's just CGI, and we know this is all for nothing. They're gonna rescue Palpatine, so we're sitting through this CGI battle. There's at least with fake rocks you get something. This is just green screen, CGI green screen, and it wasn't exciting to me because there's no point to it. I don't want to see the story about the Bothians who get the plans for Death Star 2 because it's for nothing. Hey, Desi.
Desi is devastated at the news of Acolyte being canceled after one season. Heidi and Desi, the biggest haters of Acolyte episode 6 you will ever find. Though Skywalker Academy. Oh, I hit the wrong one. Is Desi stated. Desi stated in there. Vermont Mike coming in the chat with, give me a Lucasfilm and I'll give you an animated show called Master and Apprentice featuring Sam Witwer as Plagueis and Tom Hiddleston as Palps. I do like Tom Hiddleston casting better than the Matt Smith rumored casting. Remember when Matt Smith was the star of The Rise of Skywalker? Do you remember? It was like a month. It was all that.
I remember Max von Sydow was the star of The Last Jedi, and he was like killed off in the first scene.
Force Awakens. Yeah, there's a character. Here's the thing: when Disney bought Star Wars, I thought it was an exciting time. I thought it was going to be fun, and I thought they were going to do what they did with the MCU. And then they tried to, but also I think we all quickly realized that the MCU and Star Wars are two very, very different beasts. But I think one of the big problems, biggest hurdle that they had getting into the sequel trilogy was that 20-year gap, or the 35-year, whatever the heck it was, gap between Return of the Jedi and Episode 7. There's a huge gap, and so they decided to do something in there, but we never see or really what's told what happened during that time, and so we just have to go along with what they're saying. And I think, and I said this last week, I think, but a lot of people that were mad at how Luke Skywalker was portrayed in Last Jedi was because of a gap in time where we didn't see Luke Skywalker forever, and then being told for 2 hours and 15 minutes that he's the greatest thing in the galaxy, in the Star Wars guy. Everyone is obsessed with him for some. I thought that was, I think that was a misunderstanding of Luke Skywalker as a character, on top of not being on his journey for so long, that you have to either accept what they're giving you, and if you don't, then you're going to have this very bad bitter taste in your mouth. And I think that was the thing. Max Van Sydow is what you brought up, and it's like, but who is this guy? I've watched Star Wars my whole life, and this character and this name have never come up. So what? And you never really understand who he is. They never bother to tell you. They're just like, just go with it, just go with it. And you're like, that worked. That worked for A New Hope because that was the only Star Wars movie ever. But now there's been Star Wars for 40 years, and like, I want to come on this ride with you, but you got to throw me a couple bones here and there. And I think that is the biggest hurdle that the sequel trilogy had from the get-go.
Like, who's Snoke?
That's it. Show's over.
I'm sorry. He should have been some. I know he was a clone of Palpatine, whatever, but that wasn't.
Now.
Yeah. But who is this guy? Why is he in power? What happened? I wouldn't mind seeing an anime version of the events that happened between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. Do an animated. I don't care. Or recast people. I know Mark Hamill has given his blessing for Sebastian Stan to play him. To play Luke Skywalker. Technically Star Wars, you could say that we're seeing Star Wars through the legend of these characters. So they don't have to always look the same if you think about it, because you might be hearing a story and you're imagining how you see these characters. So in that sense, you really don't have to have the exact same actors all the time. Is it worth it to recast? I don't know. But if you're worried about that, then go with a cartoon. I want to see the story about Luke Skywalker's adventures with Lando Calrissian, because those sound interesting.
And then they put it in a book. I'm like, well, 4 people are going to read this book. What a waste. Like, yeah, you know what? I would say if you're going to do it in a movie theater, it's tricky. But they did it with Han Solo, though. Just, recast. Put it on. Don't put a movie. Just recast young Luke, young Lando, which you already have, and throw it on Disney Plus. Yeah. And make it good, obviously, is what I would say. Disney, for Scotty, how we got to mention your Snoke theory sucks. And Brock and I, the episode bombed, so please watch episode 331 or 332, where we talk about Jude Law possibly being the villain in it, because I thought it would be fun to go back to the old Snoke days where your Snoke theory didn't suck. It was always fun to have a Snoke theory for 2 years or whatever, right? We all had a Snoke theory for all these years. And then, and that was when that's when Star Wars is the most fun, is when we can all hang out with it. But Desi's saying right here, according to that article, people stopped watching after the 3rd episode, which I can totally understand because that episode sucked. But every episode after that, other than 6, she meant 6, not 7, was fire. And I think I mostly agree. I still think there were a lot of issues with those episodes, but I wouldn't say those episodes. I don't like, again, if you wanted to argue Ahsoka versus that or whatever, I don't think I would. So I don't think it was any worse than some of the other stuff we've gotten. It's funny to me, though, that we haven't heard anything about Ahsoka season 2 yet. I mean, there's little things that's going to happen. Book of Boba Fett we haven't, and it's going to happen with that. Kenobi seems to be dead.
Yeah.
But this is the one that they were like, we need to tell everyone that it's canceled. Like, this is the one. It's like they're making an example of the Acolyte. It's like the Canadian women's soccer team in the Olympics with their drone scan. It's like they're making an example of just quietly let it go. This is great for us, Heidi. We get to talk about this for an hour, but like, it didn't need to come out. They just quietly put it away. We're going to get Skeleton Crew. Just let us go into Skeleton Crew and move on from there. But for some reason, they're just like, we got to tell everyone that everyone's going to be so happy about this.
There's an old nursery rhyme called, when she was good, she was very good, but when she was bad, she was horrid. And that's my take on the Acolyte. The mother stuff was kind of like, why? But I don't know. Apparently Leslie Headland is a real Legends fan, and so she tried to put Legends into it, but at the same time, she didn't want to do the Acolyte. She wanted to do an Asajj Ventress story, and they said, no, you're doing the Acolyte. So I don't know how much her heart was really into it. I wonder what would happen if she had gotten her Asajj Ventress story, if it would have been better.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they tried to do too much with it, for sure, in it. We have Ron Presak coming up with. I truly feel bad for the Korean actor who played Saul. He put so much into the series that was clearly being otherwise half-assed. We talked about that a little bit earlier on, and yeah, I just his character though, like that's we talked about a little bit earlier, but he loves Star Wars so much and was probably so thrilled to be in Star Wars, and it just you do, yeah, and like I mean the character's spoiler alert, but the character's dead, so he'll never come back, but. You know, it sucks that he's involved in the one show that got canceled. The only thing on Disney Plus to ever be canceled, apparently, is The Acolyte. Well, and then they quietly got rid of the Jeff Goldblum show. But from what Mike, to your point, is saying that Asajj is another character we need to leave behind. Leave Asajj at the door. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I only saw her in the Bad Batch. I don't know the character that well, so. She was an interesting character. I didn't know what was. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. I totally agree with Dizzy Desi on that.
I'm really interested in learning more about Chimera for sure. And I again, and then Scotty Hawk is saying maybe in comics, and I'm just saying no. Like it'd be great, but don't. But then he throws out that Rise of Kylo Ren is fire. So make that a Disney Plus show. Adapt your comic.
I mean, what's sad, the actor who played Soul, I mean, he wanted it so bad, he learned English just to
he did, yeah.
play this part. Again, back to Dizzy Disney's comment. I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. I hope we get him in live action at least. Even if we don't get May with him, I mean, it would be nice if May was with him, but maybe they will have to decide we like Chimera, but the Acolyte tank, so we'll get him without May. I don't know.
But you know what? If they
the character, and I want to know what happened with the I forget the bald chick who had purple hair at one time.
Oh, the green one.
Yeah, what's her deal with Chimera? What happened with that? I know Dizzy Disney had the theory that he was a her pupil from a High Republic novel.
Yes, and then Brock said it'd be tricky because the ethnicity is different, and we would have another Ki-Adi-Mundi incident on our hand. And I never want that again. Do you think if Ki-Adi-Mundi wasn't in the show, that there would be a second season of The Acolyte? Let's ask the tough questions.
I don't think. I think there are people out there who just want Disney Star Wars to fail. And when it does, they'll be happy that there will be no more Star Wars ever again. But I think I've figured out why people are so sensitive about Star Wars. Because if you like something or you don't like something, you don't want to be told that your opinion on it is wrong.
Yeah, you know, I also always say this, and Disney is going to love this. I say The Last Jedi is the most overrated Star Wars movie ever made. And the least and the most underrated Star Wars movie ever made. And my point is, it can be your personal favorite Star Wars movie. That's not what I'm saying. It can always be that. I'm not saying that. It could be your least favorite Star Wars movie. But something has happened where if you like it, the other people have to attack you for liking it. And if you don't like it, the people who like it have to attack you for not liking it. Right. And it's like, why can't we meet in the middle? Why can't you say, you know what? I didn't like it. You liked it. And just leave it. We don't have to attack each other on it. And that's my point. Is like I don't think it's the worst Star Wars movie ever made, and I don't think it's the best Star Wars movie ever made. I think it's somewhere in the middle, probably. If I was being honest with myself, it has a Praetorian Guard scene, so it gets a few extra points. But like it's and I'm using that as an example of like the entire fandom right now. It's like you got to fight everybody who likes it, fight who doesn't like it, and like the Acolyte, I would see people like online who hated it be bashed by people who loved it, saying it's the best stuff. Like, but it's not. And then people who, and then vice versa, obviously. I'm like, but it's also not the worst at times. Like, it's just like, take a step back for a second and just think for a moment that you're stubborn. Well, yeah, I am. I'm really, ask Brock. I'm very stubborn. But like, it's like, you can let somebody enjoy something without harassing them over it. But you're also allowed to say, you know what, I was dissatisfied with that. Because at the end of the day, because people are like, oh, blah, you can't say you don't. But you can say you don't like something. I would not go overboard with it, but you can say you don't like something because you're paying $15. I don't know how much it is in the States, probably 55 cents for Disney Plus, but it's like $200 here. But you're paying a lot of money for this thing to watch it. And if you're not happy with it, I think you're allowed to say you're not happy with it. I think you don't be rude and harass people about it, especially cast and crew members, obviously. But if you're just like if you go to a restaurant and you don't like the food, sometimes you're like, I didn't really like this. You didn't really do a good job, and that's okay.
Well, I'm from I'm a fan of the original trilogy. A lot of original trilogy fans didn't care for the prequels. I don't hate the prequels. I don't hate the story of the prequels. I did not care for how it was told. But I'm not going to sit there and tell you, oh, it sucks, and you're not a fan if you like it, blah, blah, blah. I like the sequels more than the prequels. If people want to shoot me, I don't care. I'm just saying everybody has an opinion. You're not less of a fan. You're not more of a fan. There's a reason for it. But it's just so funny that people are like, oh, well, the sequels weren't George Lucas's vision. I'm like, you didn't like George Lucas's vision when he had the prequels. I mean, all I heard up until The Force Awakens was, oh, I hope the sequels aren't as bad as the prequels. That's all you heard. I mean, there were YouTube channels dedicated to people saying how they would have written the prequels. I know I have an opinion on how I would have written the prequels, but here's the thing. It's always easy to play Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Disney saying, The Last Jedi is the best. James is wrong. I'm going to fight you now, which is, I think, a fair, valid point. I'm usually wrong, but always right. I'm definitely not stubborn, and people aren't allowed to disagree with my opinion, which is the only one that's valid. Ron is saying, I'm old enough to have seen the OT in theaters. I really like the prequels. So I did not see the originals in the theaters. I'm not old enough to have seen them, but I grew up with Star Wars. Like I always say, my parents would leave the house and probably sit down and put me to watch Star Wars. I had all the toys. I think my into Star Wars was the toys, but I watched them all on VHS a lot before I could remember. But Heidi, for me, I went into the prequels not knowing what to expect, and I loved them all. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because when the first one came out, what was it, 98? I was 16, 17 years old, whatever I was. And I watched it and I was like, I love that movie. And it took me back to Return of the Jedi when I watched that as a kid. And then I saw people all around me not like it and dislike it. And then I got into college and I had a lot of friends in college who loved Star Wars and they loved the prequels, but then there was a lot of people around it that didn't like those. And then Revenge of the Sith came out and like, everybody was like, I hate those prequels. They're like, this one's pretty good, but I hate them all. And so your point is completely valid that people forget that there was a good 15, 17, 18-year run of people disliking the prequels. But what happened was, I think the kids who were kids during the prequels became adults. And what happened was with the sequels is they were trying to push away all prequel references. The first teaser trailer for The Force Awakens had all the prequel pod racing flags. And then when you watched it in the movie, they were all gone. All the pod racing, like everything about prequels was just taken away. Like they just stripped it from everything they did. Not just in the sequels, like in all of like Star Wars, they just stripped prequel stuff everywhere. And then all of a sudden, those kids are adults and they grew up with it. And you're always nostalgic. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad at the end of it, but you're nostalgic for it. And then they kind of now we're getting more prequel stuff in there. And I think it's due to the kid who was 5 is now 31. It's not 31.
Well, again, and the person who made that point, that's great if you like the prequels. I don't say I hate the prequels. It's just not the way I like the story, how it was told. That's just me. And you could say a lot about the sequels. And I was excited when Anakin showed up in Ahsoka. I wanted to see Anakin again. I didn't hate the prequels. I just said they're not their favorite. But it doesn't matter. You can like what you like, and that doesn't make you less or more of a Star Wars fan. I'm not saying that if I like that everybody who saw the original trilogy first should hate the prequels. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that's my personal opinion. And that's the vibe I got of the original fans. Might not have liked the prequels as much. I was 27 when the prequels came out. So I was almost 30. I was well into adulthood. So it's going to have the same effect on me that it would a 17-year-old.
And I think they still feel the same as the originals, but they also feel worlds apart from the originals.
Yeah.
Like they and like you said, the CG, they're very CG heavy, even though the prequels have more miniatures and they're blah blah blah. They're way more CG heavy on because they didn't have CG when they did the original. Like it's so I completely get it. Whereas you just walk in, you're expecting this, and you get this, and you're you know, and maybe you grow into it, and maybe you don't.
I don't like the CG correction of the original trilogy. But you know what? That's how I got in theaters again. So I guess
I'm not gonna lie to you. So I didn't see them. I saw them in the theater when they were on re-release. I haven't seen Return of the Jedi in the theater though. That's the only one I had. There was things that happened, so I couldn't go. But I remember going to see A New Hope opening night and Empire opening night, and I was so excited to see Jabba the Hutt. And to this day, his appearance does not bother me. The Han walking over the tail's weirder. It doesn't bother me because first I know it's fake, so it's never really that. I like that. I mean, the other things were whatever, but the Jabba scene, I was so happy to see it in there. I could give or take it, McClunky, give or take. Han shooting first is kind of weird, but I think I know like a lot of people don't like a lot of the special edition stuff, and people they scour cons to find the original versions of them. And I haven't seen the original version of Star Wars in quite some time, and I'd be very interested to see. And when I say Star Wars, I mean A New Hope. I would be very interested to see that because I don't remember many changes being made in Empire. I remember there were some, but I don't remember anything being like drastic.
A New Hope, the Tatooine was drastic to the point that it's blocking scenes. He might. You know what? He had money. He might have gone a little too far. If you like it, if you like things, you aren't a real Star Wars fan. Everyone knows that fact. And Scotty Hot, the prequel trilogy build up until the end is something we will never experience again. So glad I grew up during that time. And great, I'm glad people like it. I'm not saying I hate it. I'm just saying it's not my favorite. But that doesn't make me less of a Star Wars fan. And if you love it, congratulations. I'm happy for you. If you think if you think Rise of Skywalker is the greatest movie of all time, I am so happy for you. I don't hate
you know what? Here's a hot take.
I didn't hate it.
Do you want to know my hot take for the night right now?
What?
Rise of Skywalker is my favorite sequel trilogy movie.
Okay. Mine's Last Jedi. But...
No, I think I'm one of 4. I think there's a reason for it. There is a reason for that. Because it ends.
Fun.
It actually has an ending for real. I thought there was a lot of things that were cheap. I thought Finn. I always say this when I saw The Force Awakens. I went in for Kylo and I came out just like I was like Finn is the best. I'm a huge Stormtrooper fan. I love Stormtroopers, and so I was like, oh, I'm all in on. And he ended up being a great character, and his character got worse and worse as the movies went on to the point where I think in Rise of Skywalker, all he does is yell Rey. Yeah, like that's all he does is yell Rey. James is looking for a fight for real, but I actually enjoyed Rise of Skywalker there's a lot of it that I think is, don't get me wrong, but I whatever. I like Last Jedi, the Praetorian Guard scene is my favorite moment of the sequel trilogy. My least favorite is The Force Awakens, and I and people get mad at me for it, but I just say my problem with The Force Awakens is it sets everything up without setting anything up. But I also say it's like a donut, and I love donuts. They are delicious, but they're empty calories. Like they are when you're eating it, you're like, this is the best, I love this so much. And then you're done, you're like, wow, now I'm hungry again. Yeah. And I've said The Last Jedi is your veggies. You got to have your veggies. That's The Last Jedi. And then The Rise of Skywalker is one of those, the steak, the potatoes, vegetables, gravy, and you have to eat it in 14 minutes. Like that's what it's one of those giant plates that you have to eat in a certain amount of time. It's one of those. It was, and I don't think I would like that in real life. But anyway, Acolyte. We should go back to clearly Acolyte.
I think I just think Rise of Skywalker is just a fun movie. But it's like Solo. Is it
I'd say Solo's a better movie though.
They're just fun movies.
Yeah. And then sometimes, I think sometimes Star Wars deserves to be more than just a fun movie, and sometimes I think it should just be a fun movie. Because again, one of the things with Star Wars also we should wrap up soon. Is
Sorry.
we all got into. Well, it's a good talk, and we're having a good chat. Is the problem is a lot of people get into Star Wars in different avenues, right? Like you original trilogy / holiday special, me original trilogy, but then you have like Scott, who's probably, it sounds like, was the prequels. So then you have the prequel kids, and then you have the ones who got in through maybe the Clone Wars cartoon, and then people, maybe it's Rebels now, because those kids that watch Rebels are now like, could probably be 20 now, So it's like, so everyone got in a different avenue. Maybe it was a book, and because we all got in at a different time, our expectations of what Star Wars is are all different now. It's not just when you didn't like the prequels, you weren't alone. You were not even close to being alone, because the expectation was 1977 to 1983 Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then the idea for the sequels was also 1977 to 1983 Star Wars. And so it's weird where we all have a different jumping off point for Star Wars, and you're giving us stuff, and it's hard to appease everyone because we're all very different, but we all like the same thing, but at different periods of time.
Yeah, I don't want people to think I hate the prequels. I don't. I like them. I just don't like, again, the same problem. I just felt there's too much story crammed into 3 movies. Yeah. And that's my problem. But here's the thing about the prequels. Maybe I think a lot of the reason why a certain generation might like it more than the older generations is because their parents, who were fans of the original, took them there where they were like 5 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old. So yeah, that means a lot to them. Your parents taking this, it's something you can bond over, because there's not a lot of movies that 8-year-olds and adults are gonna like. So
yeah,
that's gonna have good memories. So
Disney saying that Heidi hates the prequels. Ron Paysack, I'd estimate that I hate 40% of Disney's Star Wars. I like maybe another 25%, but I don't want to. It shocks me that someone is able to make Star Wars that I hate.
Don't hate me for liking it.
I don't think Ron would be in the chat if he hated any of us for liking.
No, but I've seen things where people wished Rian Johnson dead or something. It's like that.
And you know what's funny is that was almost our first topic of conversation today, was going to be on is Star Wars unlikable. And I think we'll say that for the main podcast with Brock. But Scotty Hawk just coming up with oof. Let the hate flow through you.
Well, I am.
There's something to love, says Skywalker Academy, about every Star Wars.
I've never met a Star Wars I didn't like, but I met a Star Wars that I might not like more than that.
I have a friend, Sheldon Norton, who directed the When the Galaxy Listens documentary for Rebel Force Radio, and he loves Star Wars. He's been going to Star Wars Celebration since the dawn of time, and I said to him, like, one day there's going to be a Star Wars and he hasn't been thrilled with a lot of it, but he has liked a lot of it. He loved the sequel trilogy. But I said, you're not going to be able to like every Star Wars, because he didn't like the skeleton crew picture where you could have they had the tassels on the bike. He goes, that's too Earth. There's too much Earth. I said, the more they make, the more we're going to get more Earth stuff in it. Like, that's just how it's going to be. We're going to start to get too much, and you're going to incorporate, because everybody wants to. And I don't know, you're a writer, and what it is you bring yourself into what you're writing. And if your memory is this or that, you're going to bring it in, and it might be a little earthy. And George Lucas brought earthy stuff. Everyone forgets he had zippers in, I think, Empire Strikes Back. Like, there are zippers in Star Wars. Everyone forgets. And so I think, but the more Star Wars we get, the more there's going to be one that you're not going to be maybe you won't hate it, maybe you will, but there's always going to be one that comes up that you're not going to totally jive with, especially when they're bringing in different filmmakers to do it. That's just how it is. And the Acolyte, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever your point of view is, it fell on the short end of that stick.
Okay. The thing about the Brazier was that Carrie Fisher complained that there's no Braziers in space. That's what he said. I didn't like, except but she liked the kiss at the end. If he had lived, that would have been her favorite movie.
There are only two things I hate: people who are intolerant of other people's Star Wars opinions, and the rise of Skywalker fans. It's funny Disney does he saying that because I just watched that that clip from Austin Powers today with Cole Member and Austin Powers' dad saying that line to go on. Skyward Academy. Well, I meant about the show, but some people feel that way too. There's something with love about every stars. Yeah. So Acolyte, Heidi spitting facts. Look, she's back on your side. Acolyte season 2 not going to happen. Are any of these characters ever going to come back in our lives ever again? I hate to say, other than a comic or a book, I don't think we're ever going to see Manny Jacinto in Star Wars again. I don't think we're going to see, well, obviously, like Saul won't be, like, we're not going to see a lot of those characters ever again. And it's unfortunate because I would definitely like to see where Chimera Stranger go. I mean, they sold that helmet pretty fast. It's a cool helmet, but not cool enough to keep the show alive.
I know that Target, I was walking to the toy section, they had Yord's lightsaber for sale. I'm like, why? Who wants to be Yord?
What do you want to be for Halloween? Yord. Put my clothes on backwards. Go trick or treating. Oh man! At every house you go to, you crack celery. So crack. So it sounds like your neck's getting snapped. That's your Yord horde right there. Disney does it. I need Manny Jacinto in Star Wars, but I honestly, it's unfortunate, but I think he might be.
If they're smart, they'll find a vehicle for him, and the fact that he's connected to Plagueis may save it.
I think of all the hatred that this show got, I don't think he was one of the pieces of it.
I don't know. Maybe May might be done, but they really. Although I did like his relationship with her in the end, but I'm a Raylo fan, so I'm gonna like that. But even if she didn't end up with him, I still just thought that was an amazing character. I'm like, this is the best character ever. I love this.
He was the best character in the show by a mile, I thought.
Yeah.
By a mile. When he at first I didn't like him at all when he was the goofy, and it was like, oh man. But once he turned, I was like, I mean, and the problem, I think another problem with the show was that his turn was so spelled out to us.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a surprise when it happened.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There was a few things I think they really screwed the pooch on with this series because there was a lot, it felt like there was a lot of solid stuff in there. But I'm still not understanding why this was the one they decided to be like, it's canceled. Everyone needs to know it's canceled. Never coming back.
Well, see, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
People fans having different opinions. I disagree with you on him being the goofy character. You didn't like that. I thought that was amazing. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting character. He's a villain, but he's not boring.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I just think when he was just the goofy character, I thought I was like, I'm not into this. But I liked when he twisted. I like that. I think he was the strongest part of the show by a landslide.
You said you don't believe it, but like I said, a coworker told me that he didn't have a big part and that they totally rewrote the show to give him a bigger part because the actor was just so amazing in it. You said you didn't believe that. I don't know. That's just what was.
I don't know if that would work, but I mean, he was good enough that I would have done that as well. But I would have made him an even bigger part. But also the show was supposed to be about that. Like when they told us what the show was, that's what it was about. That's why I'm so blown away. Vermont Mike saying, so when are they going to introduce Plagueis now? Just read the book, I guess. We're never going to get Plagueis.
Well, I mean, there were stills of that were not used of May fighting Soul in a lightsaber duel. So I guess she was originally going to kill him with a lightsaber, and then they changed it to maybe Force choke because that's more personal. I'm not sure.
I heard this show had no rewrite or reshoots. I heard, so that's interesting.
They might not have reshoots, but maybe they were just like a test. Sometimes they just do test pictures. They don't necessarily shoot anything. They might just do pictures.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. And that's another thing. What does Yoda know now? That's another mystery I want to know.
So yeah, Plagueis and Yoda are the only Acolyte characters that will ever ever show up in live action again since Ron. Yeah, I think Plagueis we might get. Yoda obviously we get.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about like Yoda coming in and Vanessa being like, I have something to tell you. Like, what is she going to tell him? Why is she going to tell him? I know Brock doesn't care about this, but sometimes when you start adding too much backstory, the other stories start to get watered down. And like, how much does he know? Like, and if it wasn't 100 years, it would be different. But it's 100 years before the Phantom Menace when he's like, there hasn't been Sith in so long. I don't know. So I'm wondering what goes on, unless Yoda knows the entire time that the Sith are around, which could be a cool
But Yoda's supposed to
concept
be
to play with.
white. That would be stupid. Honestly, and again, maybe I'm playing Monday morning quarterback. I would have made it Yaddle instead of Yoda.
I think they just did it for fan excitement.
Yeah.
I think the Kiani Monday in live action again for sure. I think they thought fans were going to go crazy when they saw Kiani Monday, and instead they got the reverse effect, which is still.
I will tell you, the one coworker who's a fan, he's like, he did not like her looks. He said, I don't need Star Trek in my Star Wars. I think he thought she looked like a Orion slave girl from Star Trek.
Yeah, there are things that are starting to look a little bit more like the other franchise, and I think we got one sci-fi, one's fantasy, as they always say. Skywalker Academy saying that Darth Plagueis killed Venomous and revived him several times in Legend, so that could be something to go on. So Chimera could show up again if Chimera is, because I believe, like I said, Chimera is Darth Venomous saying Skywalker Academy, which could be, but that could have been a Leslie Headland thing because she loves all that old Republic stuff. Yeah. But now we'll never know.
I mean, things get retconned all the time. So.
Absolutely. Tenebrous was fine with the learning experience, learning about midichlorians and how they can be used to save the ones he loved, because that's who everybody was speculating would be on the island. Obviously, we got Plagueis. So I don't know. I feel like what we got in the Acolyte is just going to stop in its tracks, and we'll never move on from there. We might get Plagueis and something, maybe Palpatine, maybe not Palpatine, closer to the events of the Phantom Menace in the future, but we'll never know what was going on there. We'll never know. Yeah, because we'll never know about the divergence in the Force, if that was a thing. I am curious, Heidi, and we're going to wrap up now, I promise. Sorry, I'm keeping you way too long.
No, that's okay.
But I am curious if they remove this show from Disney Plus after a year, maybe quietly remove it. And then it's like, oh, it never happened.
I doubt it, because everything's up there. The only thing that's not up there is the holiday special, but they have the faithful Wookiee from the holiday special. So
that's true. And also this show cost way too much money. Ron Persak saying, I don't mind Yoda's appearance. He clearly implies that he knows all about the Sith at the end of the Phantom Menace. True. I wasn't hell bent on it. They did it for fans. They did that for the fans. And right. I think, when you're dealing with a franchise as old as this, or as old as some, like I heard the new Alien movie, I haven't seen it. It has some fan service in it. Sometimes that's what we're here for. That is what we are here for. Disney does also saying that she does not see them removing the Acolyte from the streaming service. We'll see. I didn't see them removing Jeff Goldblum either, but they did. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Heidi, any books you want to promote?
Sure. Well, here's one called
Thank you.
It's by May, written by James.
I wrote it.
I never know where the camera is. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And then I don't have all my books.
I have yours. I put them in a pile to bring them on the show today, and I completely forgot. I'm sorry.
This is the Ghost of Windworth Manor. If you want to check out a ghost romance story, and this one I finished. Kind of doing a project with you on this. It's called His Enchanted Wand. Basically, Rothbart comes back looking for Odette in modern day America, and it happens during an actual Swan Lake ballet. So, if you like Raylo, you will love my books. If you like, I forget.
Chimera and Osha. Kosha,
yeah. If you like Kosha, I kept calling her May. It was Osha.
It was whatever. You know what? I couldn't tell which one was which either. Vermont Mike, thank you so much. He says, great discussion, James and Heidi. Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, I didn't know the two little girls were twins. I thought they were doing the whole Patty Dukes thing, like the actress playing. No, they were actually twins.
I think they should have done the Parent Trap. This show should have just been the Parent Trap in Star Wars. And right before we go, Skywalker's Academy is saying, well, Yoda is 900, well, 700-ish, so he would have learned about the Sith in preschool. It's kind of like learning about nuclear weapons in grade school. And Disney does thing. I like Raylo and Oshamir, and I like Heidi's books. There you go. And Heidi, that's a great T-shirt, which you can purchase on TeePublic today. But I do. And if you don't like The Rise of Skywalker, I don't know how you can't like it when that line got cut from it, but it's in the trailer and it's a great line.
Well, it's funny because somebody talked about Tom Hiddleston earlier. He was in The Last Jedi, but his scene got cut.
Was he a stormtrooper?
Yeah, he was a stormtrooper. And he faked a southern accent, and there was a scene when they're in an elevator and he recognizes Finn.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he goes, Finn, I never thought you, or FN 1-2, I never thought you'd make it. Good job, old buddy. I know I shouldn't do this because it's against protocol. And he slaps on the butt. And like, because it's Jeff Fox where they're going, if you're a stormtrooper and you slap a superior officer on the behind, you might be a redneck. That's what I thought.
Tom Hiddleston. Disney, why did the line get cut and where was it supposed to be? I don't know. In the trailer was when he was walking out of the water. It was a voiceover saying, but nobody knows you, who you are, whatever. And he goes, but
I do. And actually, I'm going to say in my head canon, Leia died because she actually brought Han Solo from the other side to talk to Ben.
There, headcanon. I like headcanon. That's something else I miss about Star Wars when we used to have headcanon. And it used to be a lot of fun. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Heidi, thank you so much for your time. We did an hour and 21 minutes. I'm so sorry. It's only supposed to be an hour. I'm taking you away.
I love talking Star Wars. Like this coworker will go in and we sit and talk Star Wars.
This was a lot of fun. We do this next week. You're going to be with Andrew Fantasia on Monday.
Oh boy.
If anybody else wants to join, hit me a lineup. If I was okay with that. I will not be. I'm on vacation next week, so I'll be away. But Andrew Fantasia is stepping up to bat to do it with you, Heidi. We haven't decided on a topic, so if you have anything, let me know, and we'll do that. And it's going to be fun. I will be watching 3 hours behind because I'll be on the West. 3 hours behind. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. The chat was awesome tonight. Give us a like and a subscribe. And until next time, may the force of others be with you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.